Welcome to the Morning English Podcast. Listen, learn, and speak English daily.
Hello, English learners, and welcome to our podcast. My name is Emma, and we are so happy that you are here with us today.
And I'm Mark. Yes, welcome everyone. It's wonderful to have you here with us today.
We really want this space to feel like, just a cozy living room where you're hanging out with friends. There's no pressure here, no tests, just real everyday English.
Exactly. Just a totally safe, relaxed place to practice. And speaking of everyday life, I actually wanted to start off by sharing a slightly embarrassing moment from my morning today.
Oh, really? I love embarrassing moments. Please tell me.
Right. So I woke up, opened my eyes, and I just looked at my huge to-do list for the day. And for about, 5 solid minutes, my brain was like mentally writing a formal resignation letter to life.
Oh my gosh, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, I hadn't even gotten out of bed yet, and my brain was literally just saying, I quit. Please find someone else to do all this adulting today.
That is so incredibly relatable because, well, the friction of just getting started is often the hardest part of the entire day.
It really is. You feel completely drained before your feet even hit the floor.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because that morning instinct to just surrender, it's deeply connected to learning English, or really any long-term goal. And that is the topic of our deep dive today, which is don't give up on yourself.
Such a crucial topic. We're going to talk about gentle, practical ways to keep going when studying feels too heavy. And of course, we'll learn some real, everyday English vocabulary along the way.
Yes. But before we get into the psychology of all this, we'd love it if you could take a quick second to like, subscribe, and maybe share this deep dive with just one friend who is also learning English.
It really helps our community grow. Plus, it might reach someone who is secretly writing their own resignation letter today and just really needs to hear this.
So true. Now, to kick us off, I have a curiosity-driven question for you, the listener. Think about your own life right now. What is one goal you really don't want to give up on, and why does it matter to you?
Hold that specific goal in the front of your mind as we go through this. So let's look at that overwhelming urge to quit.
Right. In English, we often describe this feeling as an uphill battle. If you picture an uphill battle, imagine like trying to hike up a really steep mountain slope while wearing a backpack loaded with heavy rocks.
Ugh, that sounds exhausting.
Yeah.
Every single step actively fights against gravity.
Exactly. But wait, I want to push back on this a little bit. When I come home after a 9-hour workday, look at my English textbook, and then consciously choose to watch TV on the sofa, instead, aren't I just being lazy?
What's fascinating here is that the science of human behavior says something entirely different. What we often label as laziness is usually just extreme cognitive exhaustion.
Wait, really? So it's not just me lacking basic discipline?
Not at all. Your brain has simply run out of processing power.
Yeah.
Let's look at what the rocks in that heavy backpack actually represent. First, we all navigate obstacles.
And an obstacle is basically an external barrier blocking your path, right? Like a demanding job or unexpected financial stress.
Exactly. Your brain burns actual physical energy, like literal glucose, trying to solve these daily problems. So by the time you sit down with your textbook, your mental battery is already blinking red.
Wow, that makes so much sense. And then on top of the obstacles, we have setbacks.
Right. A setback is an event that actively pushes you backward after you've made progress. You spend weeks practicing past tense verbs. You try to order at a cafe in English. And under pressure, your mind goes completely blank.
Ah, that is the worst feeling. You feel so embarrassed. That is definitely a setback.
Yeah, and that explains why the exhaustion compounds. You are already tired from the obstacles, and the setback makes the effort feel totally pointless.
So when the brain registers that an activity is costing huge amounts of energy but yielding very low rewards, it tries to force you to stop.
Precisely. It initiates a self-preservation protocol. This is the mechanism behind what we call losing heart.
Right. To lose heart doesn't mean you just decide to fail one day. It means your internal hope and motivation are slowly drained away by that constant friction.
Exactly. You begin to believe the uphill battle just isn't worth the energy anymore. And because this exhaustion is a biological reality, we have to fundamentally redefine the idea of never giving up.
Which usually means operating like a machine, right? The popular narrative is relentless pushing, waking up at 4 a.m., just grinding through the pain.
Yeah, but biological systems simply do not work that way. True strength and sustainable progress requires deliberate recovery. This brings us to the concept of resilience.
Ah, resilience. That's your capacity to recover your original shape after life applies intense pressure to you.
Yes. Instead of the old cliche of a tree bending in the wind, think about the shock absorbers on a car. When a car hits a massive pothole, the shock absorbers don't fight the bump.
Right, they compress, they absorb all that kinetic energy, they collapse for a brief second, and they expand again so the car can keep moving.
Exactly, and that completely changes how we should view moments of weakness. Taking a break, crying out of frustration, or taking a nap isn't a failure. It is an active mechanism for keeping the car on the road.
You're just absorbing the shock. I love that. And that is how we maintain perseverance, which isn't just a constant, unbroken line of high-speed progress.
Right. Perseverance is simply the act of continuing over a long timeline, which naturally has to include periods of resting and returning.
I can actually give you a very raw example of this from my own life. A few years ago, I experienced a total system failure with my language learning.
Oh, wow. What happened?
Well, I sat down to watch this video designed for intermediate learners. I hit play, and it was as if someone had scrambled the audio. I couldn't isolate a single word. It sounded like secret code.
Oh, that is incredibly frustrating. How did you react?
Emotionally, I completely hit rock bottom. Hitting rock bottom means reaching the absolute lowest point of a decline where things cannot possibly get any worse.
It literally comes from diving into a body of water and hitting the solid stone floor below, right?
Yes, exactly. I felt total despair. My immediate instinct was to throw all my flashcards in the garbage and just accept that I wasn't smart enough.
But the critical moment, though, is what happens immediately after hitting the bottom, because the solid rock at the bottom actually gives you something to push off against.
Precisely. So instead of fighting my brain's panic response and forcing myself to study while I was stressed out, I shut the laptop. I walked away for 2 full days.
You just let your cognitive shock absorbers decompress?
Yes. And because I allowed myself to rest without guilt, I was able to bounce back. To bounce back means to recover your energy and rise again.
And I'm guessing the video made a lot more sense when you finally went back to it.
It totally did. I opened the laptop 3 days later, and it suddenly clicked. I realized that a bad day does not decide your whole future.
That is such a powerful realization. But this introduces a very practical problem.
Yeah.
Let's say you've hit rock bottom, you've rested, and you really want to bounce back.
Right. But you're still staring at that steep mountain, and your motivation is still super fragile. How do you actually restart the engine?
The most effective strategy is to manipulate the scale of the challenge. You have to find the minimum step. We protect our consistency by drastically lowering the intensity.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Think about the psychology of a deeply messy room in your house.
Oh, I know this feeling well. If you stand in the doorway and look at the chaotic piles of clothes and books, your brain's threat center, the amygdala, treats that massive task as a physical threat.
Exactly. It triggers anxiety, and your instinct is to flee. You just want to close the door and take a nap.
But if you consciously narrow your focus and say, I am not cleaning the room today, I am only going to pick up this one single blue shirt and put it on a hanger.
The brain's threat response doesn't activate. The task is too small to cause panic. And when you hang up that one shirt, your brain actually releases a tiny drop of dopamine.
Right, the reward chemical. And that small dopamine hit provides the exact fuel needed to pick up a second item. This exact same neurological trick applies to learning English.
How so? Give me an example.
Well, I worked with a learner who felt her target language was like a vast, terrifying ocean. The sheer volume of vocabulary and grammar rules paralyzed her. She couldn't even start.
Because the end goal just felt entirely impossible. So what was the solution?
The solution wasn't to give her a motivational speech about swimming the ocean. The solution was to tell her to just get her toes wet. Her minimum step became listening to a 2-minute English podcast while she brushed her teeth.
Just 2 minutes? I feel like most ambitious learners would dismiss that as totally useless because it doesn't feel like real studying.
I know, which is a massive trap. We severely underestimate the power of momentum. That 2-minute habit bypassed her anxiety entirely.
It allowed her to stick with it. To stick with it means to continue even when it feels slow or difficult.
Exactly. Because the commitment was only 120 seconds, she never had a valid excuse to skip it. And by sticking with that tiny habit, she managed to stay the course.
Right. Staying the course means remaining on the path even if you change your speed. Like a ship in a storm, you might have to move at 1 mile per hour, but you're still heading towards your destination.
Yes. Speed is entirely secondary to direction. Adjusting the physical scale of the task is crucial, but it really only solves half the equation.
Because the other half is auditing the story running inside our own heads, right? Our internal monologue is often way more brutal than any external obstacle.
Oh, absolutely. If we want to stay the course, we have to fire our inner critic and hire an inner coach. We have to separate our feelings from the facts.
Let's bring in a real-world example for this. Imagine you go to a cafe to order coffee in English. You reach the counter, the barista asks a question, your heart rate spikes, and you completely forget how to say the word sugar.
Right, and the inner critic immediately spins a catastrophic story. I am biologically terrible at languages. I sounded ridiculous. I will never achieve fluency.
Yes. But that story is entirely based on the emotion of embarrassment, not reality. The inner coach, however, looks at the objective data.
Which would be, I forgot a piece of vocabulary because my nervous system was flooded with adrenaline from social anxiety.
Exactly. That is a normal biological response. The factual takeaway is just that I need to practice the word sugar in high-pressure scenarios tonight.
By shifting to that factual narrative, you give yourself the permission to push through. Pushing through means continuing through a short, difficult moment instead of letting it stop you.
Which is so much healthier, but it's hard to do if you don't feel like you're improving.
This raises an important question then. How do we measure our own progress so the inner coach actually has proof? The critic thrives on binary metrics. You either speak perfectly or you're a failure.
Which is just not how learning works. Did you ever struggle with measuring progress like that?
Intensely. During a complex certification course I took a few years ago, I was studying 20 hours a week, but the numerical grades on my practice exams were completely stagnant.
Oh, that is so frustrating.
I was infuriated. I equated slow, visible progress with zero progress. I was ready to quit.
Because you were measuring the wrong data points, right? You were looking for the final result rather than the small signs of growth.
Exactly. A mentor finally sat me down and pointed out the invisible progress. He noted that my heart rate wasn't spiking when I opened the exam booklet anymore.
Wow, so your anxiety had gone down. That's a huge win.
It really was. I was processing the dense academic questions slightly faster, even if it wasn't translating to high test scores yet. None of that was visible on a spreadsheet, but it proved I was on the right track.
And being on the right track means you're moving in a helpful direction, even if the vehicle is currently moving at a walking pace. Recognizing those invisible milestones starves the inner critic of oxygen.
It really does. But let's look at the ultimate fail-safe. What happens when you make your tasks tiny, you manage your internal story perfectly, and you still feel entirely stuck?
This is where we have to remember that human beings are social creatures. We are not designed to solve long-term problems in total isolation.
Right. If everything else fails, you must look outside yourself for external support, and you may need to entirely change your current roadmap. Reaching out for support is frequently framed as a weakness, but it's actually a strength.
It is. There is profound psychological relief in shared struggle.
I highly advocate for establishing a tired, not useless text message with a trusted friend. When your cognitive battery is fully depleted, you send a pre-agreed text.
Like you just say, I am exhausted and I am doubting everything today.
Exactly. And the friend's job isn't to fix your grammar or give you a toxic positivity speech. Their job is simply to validate the fatigue while protecting the goal.
So they remind you that the exhaustion is real, but your capacity to succeed remains intact. You are just tired. You are not useless.
Having someone hold that belief for you when you are too weak to hold it yourself is often the exact thing that helps you see the light at the end of the tunnel.
And the light at the end of the tunnel is a sign of hope after a dark period. And sometimes that external support helps you realize that the struggle isn't a lack of willpower. It's a flaw in your strategy.
Right. Sometimes the plan itself is the problem.
So what does this all mean? Think about going for a 10-mile hike in shoes that are a size too small. After 2 miles, your feet are covered in blisters.
And the pain is blinding, I'm sure.
Exactly. But you don't sit down on a rock and announce to the forest, I am biologically incapable of walking. I lack the discipline to hike.
That would be absurd. You realize the equipment is actively damaging you and you just take off the shoes.
Yes. If your plan to memorize 50 vocabulary words every single night after a brutal day at the office is causing you anxiety, you don't lack discipline. The shoes just don't fit.
The plan is just too heavy for your current season of life. You hold absolute authority to change the methodology.
You can swap the textbook for a podcast. You can reduce the 50 words to 5 words. You are allowed to change the plan while keeping the dream alive.
You just change your shoes. We have covered a tremendous amount of psychological and practical ground in this deep dive today.
We really have. Let's quickly recap what we've explored. We started by identifying that wanting to quit is usually cognitive overload, not a moral failing.
And we redefined resilience, not as rigid pushing, but as the ability to rest and recover. We explored the minimum step to bypass our brain's threat response.
We talked about replacing the inner critic with an objective coach, and finally, we established that you can always change your shoes if the hike is causing blisters.
To lock in the language we use today, let's review the vocabulary. As I prompt Emma, try to remember what these phrases mean. We face an uphill battle, weighed down by obstacles and setbacks.
That friction causes us to lose heart and hit rock bottom, but because we rest, we bounce back with true resilience.
Beautiful. To restart, we find our minimum step, which helps us stick with it. We recognize we are on the right track, which gives us strength to push through.
And that ensures we stay the course until we finally see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Perfect. To help you move this vocabulary from your passive memory to your active use, we have a small challenge for you.
Yes. Go to the comment section wherever you are listening and complete this sentence. One thing I don't want to give up on is blank, and my minimum step for today is blank.
Putting it into words in a public space is a brilliant way to create accountability. Your minimum step can be as small as listening to 1 minute of audio.
And please recognize this: merely by tuning in and finishing this deep dive today, you have actively demonstrated the exact perseverance we have been talking about.
You are putting in the work, and your brain is building those new linguistic pathways right now.
You truly are. Thank you so much for joining us in this space, for your focus, and for your dedication to your own growth.
And the next time you feel the weight of that heavy backpack pulling you backward, remember that you are allowed to stop walking. You can take the backpack off and catch your breath. The mountain isn't going anywhere.
Just keep your eyes on the summit. Have a beautiful, gentle day, everyone. And remember, don't give up on yourself.
Take care of yourselves out there, everyone. See you next time.